Well,
Well,
welcome,
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 welcome.
welcome.
We
We got
got
an
it.
echo.
There we go. There we go. Testing. There we go. Okay. As long as David and I can get this thing off the ground, our producer's not here, but he's given us plenty of to work with. Hi, I'm Joel Hoxley, and this is David Washington of Jay and Washington. We are here with our rendition of You Can't Make This Shit Up. David, how are you today?
I am alive and kicking. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, joining us. I'm excited. We're back from podcasts, or I'm sorry, Podfest Expo 2023. We're back in our little studio here, and we're right back at it.
And if you have not seen that last episode, you're missing out because that was incredible. I just had so much fun.
Mhm.
And it's like, this is why we want guests. This is why we want you to be involved. It's there's just so much fun that you can have when you have a real good conversation about anything, about
Right,
anything,
right,
and that means politics, um, money, religion, sex. Don't worry about what you're talking about. We found that the podcast world is filled with people that have great ideas, and that's phenomenal. And we want to make You Can't Make This Shit Up one of those broadcasts that absolutely you can't miss. So
definitely. Particularly, when we're talking about politics and cultural issues. I mean, that's where our forte is. And podcasts, Podfest Expo 2023 was exceptional, and we have to credit our guests who participated. We have to put that in our notes in that previous broadcast, and let people know who they were and where to find them if they did leave that information with
oh
us.
yeah, well, I can honestly say that I thought Justin Little was an absolute phenomenal guest.
Mhm.
He um, he does he's a mental health expert, a national speaker, podcast host, and the creative director of the Mental Wealth podcast. He was awesome.
Mhm.
And then don't forget we had our friend. So we had Jungle Jim's International Market podcast. That was fun. And several others.
Amav Rashad, the producer, my producer. Let me correct myself. My producer. I can find him on the
Dot
internet.
biz.
Dot biz.
My
Yes, my
producer
producer.
dot
Dot biz.
biz. Don't forget that, like, business. We're gonna mean business, is it?
Mhm.
He was awesome. Like, out of everybody I've spoken to, I think he gets it. And I
Right.
mean, he's not going to shy away either. And I just thought that was phenomenal. So, David, I'm going to let you kind of guide us because I usually get off topic all the time. So, wherever you want to start, it's just you can't make this shit up. The things I have talked about this morning, and just realized how much they go into our broadcast. Like,
And thank you to John for putting together the show notes for us and getting us prepared for today. Uh, Great job. Thank you for all the citations and references. We'll just jump right into it. The governor's Office of Election Crimes and Security, or the governor's election police force. There was a story in the Orlando Sentinel recently. It's been a year since the law has been passed, and the results are poor. It's of
what,
the of the in of the 20 um, suspected um, violators.
you mean the 20 violators?
Alleged violators,
No,
yes.
no, no.
The 20 violators. Okay, 4 have
so
been
that
dismissed.
so they
One
got
has been
dismissed.
convicted.
Right. So they get dismissed
Mhm.
because of intent, but they did do it. So I just want to I just want to clarify. I get it. They did do it, but because the supervisor of elections didn't do their part, it's not their fault. And I get that.
Okay.
So, but legally, I'm just saying legally.
I just look at the end results.
Okay, well, I look at the end results
I mean,
too.
if
Like,
a court of law, proved that
wasn't this supposed to prevent people from voting? It didn't.
no, of course. Intimidation, maybe.
Who was intimidated? Find me somebody out there that's not going to just like now be intimidated. You know,
I don't
somebody
think
somebody who went out and said, "I didn't vote because Ron DeSantis has a police force. It's going to find me."
with the meager results of this past year of alleged violators, the thought of an election police, and I'm sure there's people in the community who's thinking that. Let me finish. There's people in the community that are thinking this, that, wow, what if I do go to the wrong precinct, or what if I don't have identification, or what if I said something while waiting in line that may piss someone off? Is the election police going to come down and arrest me? Now, granted, the fears are not really grounded in fact. However, the thought of an election police, a whole division with lots of money dedicated to it, millions dedicated to this division, for something that could be easily handled by the Florida Department, FDLE, or whatever they call it, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or whatever. Eh, I just don't understand another example of big government, which, Republicans continue to say they believe in small government, but with this Office of Election Crimes and Security, it's another layer of bureaucracy that Ron DeSantis created for meager results. Your thoughts?
No, I'm just amazed. The Office of Election Crimes and Security. Now you're calling it a police force.
That's what I
No,
mean.
no, no, no.
I did reference. I started
This is
by
what
saying
Democrats
the
do.
Office of Election Crimes and
Okay,
Security.
but this is what
And
you
then
do.
I used
Now
the
you've
street
transitioned
language.
it. So
Yeah.
this is "Don't Say Gay" all over again.
No, it's not.
Oh, come on.
No, it's not.
You changed the whole thing. It's not a police force. It's just a oversight committee type thing that looks for crime and security. It's not like it's not out there going, "Oh my goodness, we're going to find," it's to make sure there is no fraud. And
Of the
and
millions of people that
listen,
vote, 20 cases.
yeah, because Florida has really good law since 2000 when we screwed it all up.
So why the creation of the police
Because
force?
because you have an entire population,
In the villages.
that has decided to not trust the government and not trust elections. This is one more thing to put in place to say, reassured, please go out and vote.
I thought this was the free state of Florida.
It is the free state of Florida.
So what's stopping people from going, casting their ballots, taking their asses home?
Registering to vote?
Okay, what's stopping them from registering to vote?
No, nothing stops them from registering to vote. They just
Okay.
don't register to vote. And those that register, the amount of people that are registered to vote that have never voted,
Okay.
like Dan Newland. Like Dan Newland is a registered voter, and I'm proud of him being a registered voter. But
Sure.
Dan Newland, his commercials are all over the place. We might be able to check and see where his donations go, but he doesn't vote. He doesn't make any of our decisions.
He exercises his right not to vote.
Correct. Now, how many people get registered to vote and don't vote? The number's drastically high,
Okay.
and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And then you have states that automatically, it's even worse because they automatically, when you update your driver's license, when you update anything in the government, like this is Georgia, Georgia will register you to vote.
Correct.
They will also check to change your address. Boom, registered to vote.
So
now you have a bunch of people registered to vote that aren't voting.
Okay.
So how are you good? You're defeating the purpose. Like, get them out to vote. Educate.
So that's what the purpose of this Elections, Crimes, and Security Office is supposed to do?
That's not what I'm saying. You can look.
I'm just trying to understand the purpose of this police force.
It's not a police force. It doesn't have. You do realize that they had to actually give this to the law enforcement. They can do the research, and they did. They have no arresting authority, so you cannot call them a police force. Okay. Now, I will defend you in the fact that this is a crazy idea, but it's an idea because there's a lot of crazies out there, especially in the state of Florida, as we have evidenced up in January 6th and all this other stuff. Look, I'm not going to defend these people, but we have to do things sometimes to reassure them that we had to get the president of the United States to retract part of his statement because Florida voters weren't going to vote by mail. Florida voters were not understanding that we have secure elections in Florida. We had our disaster. Like I always say, David, we're a country of mistakes. And when we make those mistakes, we get better. And Florida made a huge mistake in 2000 by allowing anybody humanly possible to vote. No, that was bad. But it was horrible. And it's in my book. In my book, Bringing America Together Again, I address this. People say that election was settled by the Supreme Court. It's just the voting, just the counting was getting out of hand. It was totally out of hand. And we had to get to a point where a decision had to be made. It was already George W. Bush had won. You can go back and you can look at all of the data. At the end of the day, he would have still ended up your president with less popular vote. But Florida was the deciding part. But I'm not going to defend it. This is why the subject like this is, for me, is moot. Like my friend is Primrose. I mean, Primrose has got his hands in this too. So it's like,
I'm just looking for the justification of this particular office when there is no official leader, and there were arrests made. Let's make that clear. Arrests were made at the prompting of this office of election. Let me use the Office of Election Crimes and Security. There were arrests made. So
yeah, there were, but they were not.
They were at the behest of their investigation. Office's investigation. So
right.
Arrests were made.
They were made by the
law enforcement
Department of Law Enforcement.
Correct.
So it had to been turned over to them.
Exactly.
Now,
and
some of those officers were giving these things out and going, I have no clue. And I get it. They were
they were on orders by this particular office.
No, they were on orders to put those warrants out because the Department of Law Enforcement decided to enforce these.
Enforce what?
The law being broken.
As determined by the Office of Election Crimes and Security?
The evidence that was provided by
the Office of Election Crimes and Security. And many of these arrests were deemed unwarranted. All I'm saying is
Was
that
there okay?
is that
So
returned citizens who thought that they had their voting rights restored thought that they could vote.
well,
And they were arrested at the behest of the investigation conducted by the Office of Election Crimes and Security, an office that I believe is unwarranted, has no
so
leadership, has a nice budget,
so then,
but
David,
but really has no effect over in voter fraud, which is minuscule when you look at the millions and millions of people who are registered and who actually cast a ballot.
so David, so but basically what you just said is no grand jury should be put together to make a determination if somebody should be charged.
If there are four,
Hold on,
if
no,
there are
I
four,
asked
you
a
just asked
question.
me a question, right? I'm answering the question. If there are four people who lived in the villages who admitted to election fraud, of course there should be a grand jury investigation.
No, I'm saying, see, you went to a specific, but what you just said,
Mhm.
when you compare the department that you're talking about,
Mhm.
there should be absolutely no grand juries because grand juries,
Where does grand jury fit into the
grand juries,
Office of Election Crimes and Security?
so grand juries act in the same manner as this does.
That's we're comparing two different
No,
instances.
we are saying,
So the
so you're comparing,
so the Office
you're
of
saying
Election
this office, boom.
the Office of Election Crimes and Security uses a grand jury.
No, I
Okay,
didn't say
so
to use a grand jury. It's the same thing as a grand jury. Because all the prosecutor has to do is tell you, I want to prosecute this guy for X, Y, and Z. The whole system is broken because of course they're going to.
so why add
When does it
another
look?
layer of
So
brokenness?
why don't we take that? Why don't we get rid of that? Why do we need that problem? We don't need that either.
We can talk about grand juries later.
No, but
That's a
I'm
whole
saying
different
this is the
situation.
same
But this
thing.
is not a grand jury. This is the Office of Election Crimes and Security, another layer of bureaucracy that Republicans just love. They wet their fucking pants
No, they
and
don't.
say, we believe in small government. And we get another layer. We get another layer of government with DeSantis. I know this is a tangent. DeSantis taking over Reedy Creek. And that's a different conversation. But it's just another layer of
just
for what?
You can't
For what, Joel?
you can't see
Grand jury is different.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's a group of people that get together under the law that say, okay, we're going to look at the evidence, which is what they did. They turned the evidence over.
Okay.
And then a charge is given, and then the person is arrested. It's the same thing that happened. They have no authority. They have no authority, David. So we'll talk about it in that light. But I'm not here to defend another part of the bureaucracy. I'm not. That's like saying because you can't.
I'm here to tear down another layer of bureaucracy.
You can't make this shit up, and I get it. But I'm also telling you, there are a bunch of people out there that believe this was a necessity. And many of us that may not believe in it. So, and then Reedy Creek, oh yeah, I'll pounce on that in a heartbeat.
When I look at the organizational chart of this particular office, I see people, or I see vacancies mostly. However, I see positions that are paid to investigate alleged election crimes. And let's not forget the security part. Whatever they do as far as the security part, I'm not too sure. However, I look at that structure and I don't see a position here, or several positions that says grand jury. I don't see.
You don't understand. Look,
people who are brought in.
I'm comparing what happens here as the same thing. Okay, it's the same thing. It's a layer. It's a layer that comes into place. I'm not. See, this is the thing. You put something on, like, you can't make this shit up. That makes absolutely no sense because it has absolutely no impact. It has absolutely nothing but frustrate you.
No, I mean it does have impact on the 20 people who had their cases dropped, 20 people who were arrested.
Yeah, well, they got arrested because they broke the law. They did break the law.
They
did break the law. Period. Like, I'm not going to argue.
they
that
broke
one.
the law because
No, They see
they
because
broke the law.
There you
Yes,
go. I love
okay,
it.
they broke the law.
Thank you.
And the charges were dropped.
That's right.
The cases were dismissed
because they broke the law, because a government official broke the law for them, right? So yes.
Okay, so the government official didn't.
So the government official
did get arrested.
So well, listen.
Listen,
I'm
okay,
not-
let's say okay.
let's talk
so
to-
you're
let's
right.
talk to a
They
supervisor of
did break the
election.
law. They did break the law because you want to know why? Because the governor, this governor, and this legislature refused to allow returned citizens to have their voting rights restored, despite the people of the state of Florida
Okay.
voting for an amendment to the Constitution allowing that.
So look at the amendment that you're talking about.
An
Look at the
that
amendment you're talking about. Now,
passed.
you're talking about defining. You're talking about defining the constitutional amendment that we passed. That the definition was you need to pay for your crime. You mean you have to do restitution. You must be fully cleared of your felony. That's all that you're talking about. Yes, they stopped and said, wait, before this gets implemented, we need to define it because it's very vague. So it's not vague anymore. Now, whether you agree with it or not, it's the legislature that did this, right? The law, we passed it as a people, and the legislature defined it.
Amendment 4 that passed in November 2018.
Gotcha.
Passed with 65% of Florida voters approving a constitutional amendment that automatically
64 point something, but yeah, you can round up.
65%. A constitutional amendment that automatically restored voting rights to most Floridians with past convictions who had completed the terms of their sentence. After, in 2019, June, DeSantis signed Senate Bill 7066 into law, prohibiting returning citizens from voting unless they paid off certain legal financial obligations imposed by a court pursuant to a felony conviction. So
you just said.
We had Amendment 4 that said, "Hey, okay, you get your rights restored." So we had about
wait,
6. We had about 8 months. 8 months where returned citizens thought that they had their rights restored. Okay. And then in June of 2019, DeSantis said, no, you're going to have to pay your certain legal obligations.
Do me a favor.
Okay.
Read that sentence again. Read the amendment.
Okay. Amendment 4, a constitutional amendment that automatically restored voting rights to most Floridians with past convictions who had completed the terms
of their sentence. So they defined what the terms of a sentence were. That means you need to pay your penalty.
Yeah, that's what was said in Senate Bill 7066.
Correct. Because there was
Amendment 4 said, and I remember this clearly, say, when you're done serving your time in jail.
No, they didn't say time in jail. They didn't say time in jail. We need.
Then how do you complete?
It was terms vague. Of your sentence. You pay your debt. If you have a fine, you pay your fine. And guess what? They came in. These special organizations and started paying people's fines. Okay, so you're trying to.
That was after the Senate bill was passed.
You're trying to. Yes, I can see your point, and I'm not going to doubt your point, and I'm going to point it out. But you did read what we passed, and if we passed it that way, we said the terms of your sentence, and the DeSantis administration said, "Hold on a second, because what is the term of a sentence? When is it complete? After probation is done, after the debt is paid, that's when it's done. So I totally agree with, I voted for this law. I'm with you. I voted for it. But I also voted
for
for
the
it.
amendment.
I also voted for the amendment because it said the term of their sentence.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, as a citizen of Florida who's voting for a constitutional amendment, that they will have paid their debt to society. They will have paid their fines, and they will have done everything. So this is you can't make this shit up, but this is defining what this shit was.
The law defined
What the terms,
right.
it's the law, right? The law said it. They just defined it, and the people
Specifically the
people,
financial piece.
yes, the people that are upset about this are because they didn't define what the terms were. They should have defined it, and then it could have said, and it doesn't. It excludes, financial obligations, etc. Maybe even probation. That could have been in there, but it wasn't. So I agree with you, but you're making a milkshake. It's not making sense because you just read it. I heard you. That's why I had you read it again.
Mhm.
And then you just said the same thing when we passed a law that said, this is what you have to do to finish your terms.
So Senate Bill 7066 further defined what the terms were.
Correct. How you completed the terms
because it was interpreted Amendment 4. Because there were some returned citizens who did vote. I mean, who were allowed to vote.
Correct.
So what DeSantis did is said, no. We're going to define specifically that you need to complete your financial obligations attached to that particular crime that you serve time for.
It's not just time.
That conviction.
It's time in prison. It's time on probation, and it's your financial obligation. It's what you do to actually finish is you've paid everything off. You're done. There's nothing left for you to be obligated.
It says here, no, it says that 7066 specifically stated that you need to meet those financial obligations.
Correct, because that was the thing that people were saying wasn't part of the terms, and it is. It's part of.
Right, they defined that was part of the terms. It wasn't specifically defined in Amendment 4.
But don't
because we know when you're a felon,
don't you vote for this?
You don't have any money when you're in jail to pay off any fines. And when you get out of jail, it's very difficult for you to find a job or to be hired for anything to pay off those exorbitant fees.
Okay, so what's your point?
My point is allowing someone to vote after they serve their time. Their term.
Time is different than their term.
Right.
The term of that. I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying.
What you're saying.
Of course you do.
But
negates everything you just said.
No, but
just negates everything.
No, it doesn't. It does. Your definition is incorrect. It's you want it to be time, and it's actually that you read it. You read it verbatim. So guess what? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
7066 specifically added the financial piece.
Finishing it off to say
that's
how you finish your term.
If 7066 was not added, then there will be thousands of returned citizens eligible to vote right now. Right?
And millions of dollars not paid in debt.
Why you say that?
Because they were fined for their violation.
Okay, that doesn't mean that they unable to pay their debt.
So the
having the right to vote has nothing to do with paying your debt.
So the 16-year-old that just got flying down the new toll road at a whopping 130 something miles an hour,
Mhm.
who could have gone to jail, didn't go to jail, but he has $1,100 in fines and has to go before the judge. Okay. So we're just going to say, nah, we're going to take and waive your fine. And whatever the judge says is going to be, that's it. Like whatever the judge says, that's it. The judge could waive it, but he doesn't. So he keeps the fine in place, but he says, we're not going to put you in jail or we're not going to suspend your license. Whatever they say, right? The fine is still part of the crime. That's still owed. He's not going to get away with getting his license back until he pays the $1,100. So that's why I'm just kind of confused. Being a former MP.
So if I'm let's use real
I
word
don't think
here.
a 16-year-old
If I'm
has that money.
if I'm convicted of a felony,
Mhm.
I serve my time, but there's court fees that I need to pay. But I'm out. I'm at home. I'm working a
Court fees.
call. Wait. I'm working taking phone calls for an airline at home, and before Senate Bill 7066, I register to vote. I get, I register, I vote for the first time, and then Senate Bill 7066 is taken away from me. Now, although I'm at home, I'm working, doing cold calls or whatever, what little money I have, I'm paying off that debt, or I'm not. Irregardless, I'm still eligible to vote. I register. I cast my first ballot since being released. I either pay my bill or I don't pay my bill. That has nothing to do with having the right to vote, to casting a ballot. I don't see why
It's part of
the terms
paying back
as
to society. Okay, so
as defined by 7066. If 7066 was not there, I'm saying in my situation,
no,
I
if it
would still
wasn't,
be working.
if it
I would
wasn't
still
there,
be voting, and I could still
if it wasn't
pay
there,
down my debt.
if it wasn't there, and somebody went to court and said, okay, anybody who's been voting that didn't pay their debt to society has broken the law, then what's going to happen? It's going to go to the legislature and it's going to be defined. So it was going to end up being there anyway. So this is we can agree to disagree, but you can't say if I borrow.
Let's just say we don't want
if I borrow millions of dollars.
We don't want black and brown people and the poor voting. Let's just say
No,
that.
because more of these people. Okay, now David, more of these people that come out of jail are white. More of the people that are shot by police are white. I mean, it's just natural because there are more white people than black people. So let's not go, percentage. You can break it down if you want to, but it's lovely to say something like that because that's not the truth.
I said black and brown and
It's
the
not
poor.
the truth. Poor, all poor. The law is all against poor. It's always been against the poor.
Which includes black and brown and white people.
Everybody who's poor. I mean, but not every black and brown and is poor. So it's simply the law. You and I can have that debate later because I truly believe that the law can create poverty in somebody.
Sure.
And not intentional
Or
crime.
keep people in poverty.
So I get what you're saying, but that's your interpretation of what you voted for. And my interpretation of what I voted for are different.
I just think that we could use the
Aren't they?
$2.3 million in a better way. That's all.
And
Much better way.
And I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Others will. I'm just defending the point of the law that I voted for was X, and yours was Y.
Mhm.
Okay. Or mine was Y and yours was X.
Sure.
So it's simply, I feel that the bill defines it. Now, the creation of the crimes unit, I disagree with the governor on several different things, but I also have to be a Republican, see the side that's being voted. What are they doing? I understand what they're doing, whether you like it or not. That's what I voted for.
All I know is that I should avoid being a felon in the state of Florida.
You should avoid being a felon at any time.
Exactly.
So we agree on that. And see, we agree on everything. That was a healthy debate. No, there's times I feel caught, David, because
You feel what?
I feel caught
Caught?
in a situation where, I understand what Republicans do and I understand certain things but hypocrisy, I will never understand.
Mm.
Okay. And when you approach it the way you did, I get it. It's true. Okay. We want less government, but we added to the government. I get it.
Sure.
You're not going to get an argument from me on that. We're going to have to find something to get to an argument with because we are going, because I'm in agreement with you. I don't want that. And I don't think when DeSantis, when he went after the travel industry and he went after cruise ships and he said there was going to be no passports and all this other stuff. Now, because you know me, that didn't go over well with me. It didn't, because of private businesses. Listen, there are countries you have to go to. You have to have immunizations to go to.
I know.
So if the cruise line says,
Mhm.
You need to fucking be vaccinated to come on my ship, I have no
Mhm.
problem with that. Now, I understand what DeSantis was trying to get across. I disagree.
Mhm.
I disagree 100%. I will disagree today. It was never going to get passed. And when the Supreme Court said, you can't do this, or the court said you can't do this,
Mhm.
I'm in agreement.
Mhm.
So Maxwell will say, oh, all of these things that the governor's done that the law is overturned. Yes, but how about all the things that our counties do and all those things that we're paying for too?
Mhm.
Like lawsuits about, hey, we want to have all of our constitutionals nonpartisan because we're sick of Republican Democrat politics with this.
Mhm.
We voted overwhelmingly in Orange County for that, but the courts overruled it. So what was the fight? And then you got then we, because it was us that made the decision, we have to go defend that too. So we end up spending more money because we want to try to get it appealed.
The rent stabilization.
Oh, rent stabilization voting. That's another one. We could go on that one. It's like, and we can't call it rent stabilization because one of our clients absolutely wants us to use the proper terms, and I agree.
Rent stabilization is the proper term.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm thinking.
I didn't
I'm
say
thinking
the other one. I didn't say the other one.
Listen, I'm thinking one thing, and then I'm thinking one thing and saying another. But no, you get it. So, David, an argument about nothing because I agree that the task force shouldn't be there. We could eliminate it, and we'd have no problem.
Yeah, it would have no effect on our everyday lives, and that's one of the points I want to make is that with Orange County government, Florida government, we're seeing bills being produced, ordinances being produced, and Orange County government, these things being presented, knowing how the political landscape is, like you said, those things being passed, knowing what the landscape is, and then getting to the state legislature, getting to the state Supreme Court, and saying, what are you doing? This is what the Constitution says. This is how this operates. What are you doing?
Both sides do it.
It is January. Where is the rent stabilization? In regards to, the state government, again, going back to our example of the Office of Election Crimes and Security, how is that making the cost of eggs any cheaper, or lessening traffic on Colonial. It doesn't do anything for my kitchen table issues. Going back to Orange County government, if progressives, liberals, Democrats want these type of changes, guess what? You got to do the hard work. You got to get out there, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, whatever. You have to do the work of getting your candidates elected.
Yeah, this is like you say, it's consequences.
There are consequences
I live
for your
in,
lack of
I live in
actions.
Seminole County, and I'm glad to live in Seminole
Uh-huh.
County. It's purple now. It's not as red as it used to be. I've never lived in a place, David, that I could actually, vote and be counted.
Mhm.
Because typically, I've always lived in a location where there were more liberals than there were conservatives. When I was in Maryland, okay, the same thing. When I was in Massachusetts, same thing. Came to Orange County, same thing.
Mhm.
Seminole County is where I wanted to stay because at least I knew that we had a conservative government, and it works well.
And a higher tax rate than Orange County. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that.
Mhm.
But we use our money wisely.
Yes, you do.
And I think that we have a conservative, we have a conservative actually there that nobody likes in Lee Constantine, because he's an environmentalist, and they think he's, but you know what? Lee is Lee, and Lee is trying to protect Seminole and Orange.
Mhm.
He's trying to protect environment. He's out there doing something. At least he's doing something. Right?
Yes.
He's fighting with Mr. Dorworth and
Yes.
these people,
Yes.
because he sees, the overgrowth. But you have a place like I live in, Castleberry.
Right.
They have Republicans in the entire. Well, they have one Democrat, and they're nonpartisan. But what do you think they're doing for the city of Castleberry? They're actually putting in an urban plan.
Mhm.
Now, any Republican who says, well, we're going to go in with an urban plan, what does that say? Well, we're going to change the electoral landscape to a more liberal landscape.
Mhm.
And then they understand that, but they want to make sure there's housing. I mean, Bonilla went crazy the other day about telling everybody that these other counties need to take up. And I'm listening to her going, I guess you don't know what's going on in Castleberry. They're building houses.
Yes.
And most of those people, but they work in here. Okay, so you're not getting any taxes from, what do you want? You want it to be North Orange County, or what? What do you want? I don't understand where she's coming from. Seminole is doing what Seminole does. Seminole has jobs, and
Yes.
the people in Orange County go up to do them.
Yes.
They have the AAA building up there. They have Verizon up there. They have Deloitte up there. Tell me, are those
Advent
people?
Health.
Not all of those people are living in Seminole County.
Mhm.
Some of them live in Duval County. Some of them live in.
Sure.
She kind of got off like, and I was like, we always come to this same place, David, where we go, what's going on? Where's she coming from? It's, and the Republicans do it the same thing. Like, you hear an argument and you go, tariffs? Like me, tariffs? Republicans want tariffs? This America First became tariffs? When did the Republicans ever throw tariffs in? It's like, tariffs are the worst thing for our party. Because we are the party of lower taxes. Well,
Right.
if you look at a tariff, it's a higher tax. I'm done with that subject, but I'm just saying,
Sure.
This is where Joel will actually defend the Republican Party, but tell you, when they call me a rhino, I'm going to tell them, I think you need to look in the mirror.
Right.
Because you're doing the things that aren't Republican.
Mhm.
You're doing the things. These racists in the party, they're racists in both parties.
Yes, sir.
But the highlighted ones in my party,
Mhm.
they need to go, because it's not the party of racism. It's a party that started with Lincoln, Frederick Douglass. Like, my favorite historian, I just talked about Black history. It's my favorite month because There's so much history, but
Right.
all the kids I know, they totally focus on Martin Luther King Jr. Do you know I'm a Lutheran, right? And if I want to research Martin Luther, because Martin Luther King Sr. decided to change his name,
Mhm.
I can barely find anything on the leader of the church because he's 500 years old. And all I can find is a MLK, MLK. I'm like, I didn't put in a K. Like, is there a way I can search this with just like Martin Luther? I say that just jokingly, but it's Frederick Douglass. It's, you know, these inventors. We have so many. The 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 fact that you're picking cotton and it's and all of a sudden you got a cotton gin or whatever they call it. It's like
Mhm.
that wasn't a white guy that decided to do it. Would it have ever been better if somebody hadn't come along and made it better? Peanut butter, you know, who would have thought about crushing peanuts and getting the oil and
Carter G. Woodson.
yeah, I mean, let's give history. I mean, and then I think one of my favorite movies recently, it's not my favorite movie, but it's one of my favorite movies recently, was to watch the mathematicians to actually discover that there were people in NASA
Mhm.
that were struggling
Mhm.
and that somebody had to take and recognize them. It shouldn't have taken this long to recognize them. But we have. Now the story is out there. Now we know these names. And I wish I was prepared to say that because I would have
Sure,
said the
sure.
names. But I love the movie because it highlighted Black history that I didn't even know.
Mhm.
And that's more recent than the stuff I studied.
Yeah. You're lucky you get to watch movies. My form of entertainment, the last time I was in front of a TV for X period of time was watching the old Frontline documentary on Citizens United.
Everybody, I'm gonna
With
correct.
Kai
I'm gonna
Ryssdal.
correct him. I'm gonna correct him for just a moment. So I made him take a break the other day. So I'm gonna correct him because he's gonna remember. I had him take a break the other day because I told him one of my favorite movies
Yes. Man,
is
that was
a
so
king's
awesome.
is a king's speech,
Mhm.
and I really like it. And I go, he's looking at me. And I go, fuck, 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 shit, 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 shit. And he's looking at me like I'm all freaking crazy. And I go, no, you got to watch it. So I mean, he got work done. He was still working, but
Right.
I put it on and I was like, you have to watch this.
Fabulous movie.
I mean, the cinematography.
Yes.
It was a
It
phenomenal
was a
movie.
very good film.
And I sat there and I'm like,
Yes.
I just hope you enjoyed it as
I
much as I do.
did. Oh, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I remember I grabbed you at one point
Yep.
because it was just a beautiful, beautiful scene, and it spoke to me. And
David, while you're working, I just suggest, and if you need to borrow it from me, I suggest you watch the Spielberg movie Lincoln.
Mhm.
It was phenomenal. I saw it in a theater with my son when we were down visiting my mother-in-law,
Mhm.
and we just said, "Okay, let's go over there." And we watched it, and it was so historically correct that
Mhm.
there were things that if you know the real history, you'll pull out of there. Like there's a scene where
This is the one with Daniel Day-Lewis.
yes,
Okay.
there's a scene where he asks these two soldiers that are black,
Mm.
what are you fighting for? And they say freedom.
Mhm.
Frederick Douglass worked on Lincoln forever to try to get him to see a different end result.
Correct.
But it took two soldiers to make him realize they want the same thing. They want the same thing everybody else hears. They're not going to go back to Africa and come through the immigration process. They're not going to, they don't, that's not their home.
Right.
And
Right.
it took Lincoln a while. Frederick Douglass wasn't a supporter of Lincoln. He was an advisor,
Sure.
but he certainly all in. If you read it, he's all in on Ulysses S. Grant.
Right.
And I think at the end, he kind of understood where Lincoln was.
Mhm.
But then he was shot.
Right.
Which brings us, we could have transitioned to any one of the next.
Here we go.
No, we could
Conceal and carry.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we're at 51 minutes, and we could transition to any of the ones that we had. But this is a phenomenal conversation. I think enough people they don't see we're not angry. We're and I have to take points that I'm not
because we haven't been drinking yet.
Oh, listen, I can drink and not get in a fight.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I can. I mean,
just now.
Yeah,
I get more mellow.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
But you brought a lime, so we have to make sure we take
Yes.
So wow. Last one was 45 minutes. Now we're almost at an hour. I mean, this was a good conversation.
Good shit. I do want to watch Lincoln, so I'm gonna see if I can watch it tonight or definitely tomorrow. You know, the last time when we watched the King's Speech, wasn't that a Friday?
Yeah, we were in the office.
Yeah.
We were in the office.
I like our Fridays to be open.
We didn't get out until 5 o'clock.
We did, and that was such. It was one of those experiences that I've had with you that I will always remember and enjoy. There's others, awesome memories. But that one, I mean, it touched. I set my butt down, despite wanting to get up and go do something. But I sat there and watched it, and I believe that was one of the most enjoyable and important films that I watched in a while.
So, David, I always wanted to put models together, but I can't. Couldn't.
Right out of the King's Speech.
You have to see it. You got to see it. If you're politics, politics not a nasty word.
It's not.
That's one of the things that David and I want to get across to everybody.
It's not. We
have a show called "You Can't Make This Shit Up" because you can't. Like, who would have thought you'd put a police force? You could use the word police, but police force.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sitting here defending something that I think is absolutely moronic, but I understand why they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it will bring us to a conversation about, the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to talk about, how do we fix the police system without being there. We'll talk about these things, but we'll talk about them without a lot of feeling in the way.
Exactly.
When you remove the
our feelings. Yeah.
When you remove the feelings and you have that conversation, it's a whole lot different.
Right.
Like, did I believe that something was wrong with the election? For about 10 seconds.
Sure.
For me, for about 10 seconds, I thought it was weird because he was winning and then he lost.
Mm-hmm.
But then I come to realize the things that nobody looks at because they got all their emotion in it. How the fuck did he think he was going to win Arizona after what he did to John McCain?
Right. Or let's bring it more local.
How did he think by putting tariffs in place?
Let's bring it even more local. We were losing the primary for House District 35. Excuse me, the Democrat primary. We were losing that night. But then we know that there are other votes that are still being counted that aren't necessarily being reported when the large majority of the ballots are being counted. Yeah, so our candidate ended up winning.
Correct.
Overnight.
And yet you had to tell him that he was a little bit too premature, but that comes with education. But
yes,
he thought he lost.
Yes, he did.
But then I remove my emotions. I look at the electoral map. I look at what happened. I say, you put tariffs in. You had people. Maybe the owner of Harley Davidson supported you, and maybe his people all voted for you.
Right.
But the next go around, they're not voting for you because you basically put half their business out.
Right.
You didn't see what your tariffs did to the people that actually voted for you because they thought you were just like them. You're going to do the kitchen table type stuff. He talks the right talk.
Right.
Get it wrong. But sometimes it's just like, look at when we make a decision, do we kind of go into it like blind, or do we say, this could go wrong, this could go wrong? I was having a debate with a fundraiser the other day, just simply because I just wanted that unknown. you can give me a picture, it's all rosy, and yes, if that perfect scenario comes out, that's it. But what happens when X happens, and then when Y happens? And don't tell me they're
Exactly.
not going to happen,
Nope.
because somebody's going to get curious and somebody's going to do that. Always,
Right.
we do it all the time. So Stephanie Murphy, my assumption is Stephanie Murphy jumps in
Mhm.
and runs against Scott. And Scott is probably more vulnerable than Marco Rubio ever was.
However, he'll still win. Coming from a liberal,
Well, I mean,
I believe Scott is Senator Rick Scott is a formidable um, campaigner, deep roots across the state, and
actually served in the Navy where she didn't.
right.
I'm just, I had to say that. But you and I, we take the emotion out. We look at the situation, and I can look at the governor and say, you're a JAG attorney, and you're trying to tell me that you want businesses not to do business. So, I mean, if he took the emotion out of it, it
Right.
would be a different thing.
Right.
But he's going to fix Reedy Creek. He's going to
Mhm.
call them back into session probably next week, and he's going to say, fix this because I don't want this part of your actual legislative session.
In recent reports, they're saying that the governor is asking to create a board that will oversee Reedy Creek, knowing that the financial obligations would be too much, too harsh for the local governments of Osceola County and Orange County, to the tune of nearly $200 million per year.
Yeah, but the fire department wants to be out of the Reedy Creek.
I didn't know that.
I'm saying, because so you look at these things and it's like, well, I see why they want out of Reedy Creek, because hey,
they get to unionize.
they are unionized.
I
I mean,
know.
everything in Disney it's one of the
Yeah.
few places that absolutely has the right to a union. I mean, they had a lot of power with Reedy Creek, and I think it's good that they're looking at it. But the way we got there, again,
Yeah.
we get to things that because we have gut reactions and emotional. Like, I really think that at the end of the day, and David Smith is my representative,
Mhm.
and I feel, and it's a feeling statement,
Uh-oh.
I feel because of the way he's done in the past, this logic, that he's not going to be a fan of this constitutional carry, because we've gone out and we've served our country, we've defended our country,
Mhm.
and I don't know how the sheriff's department supports this. I agree with Mina, and Mina, I'm sorry, but you're still a Republican, even though you're registered Democrat. I mean, you stand with Republicans in this situation. It's like constitutional carry is not constitutional carry. It really isn't. It's just saying because it's in the Constitution. So everything that's in the Constitution should be automatically given to you. And guess what? It doesn't happen.
Mhm.
So it's crazy. We'll have 26 states when Florida does this, but to be able to put a concealed weapon, like, crazy. And the speaker of the House had just kind of announced that, and I'm looking at it going, like, really? How
The speaker of the
Florida
Florida
House.
House. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he's-
He's
he said in a press conference that permitless uh, he said you can actually have a concealed weapon without a permit. And I was going to say it like the professional way, but my mouth just kind of got all tied up. But to me, here again, big NRA supporter, big First Amendment guy. I truly would love to take every barrier out of the way because of what the constitutional amendment means.
Mhm.
But I think, as the Supreme Court has announced, the state has a right to enforce restrictions.
Correct.
So you're just basically saying in this legislation, we remove our
Powers.
authority
Yes.
and give it to the
individual.
Constitution, even though those weapons may not be covered.
Mhm.
So again, here we go. When you look at the Constitution, it's the smallest one.
Sure.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, how does telling somebody that a weapon that only shoots 50 meters
Mhm.
accurately,
Mhm.
that's not a weapon for militia. I mean, you and I have had this conversation, but I have to say, it's where my party has gone. And I've seen these people. I meet these people. I talk to them. They're not crazy.
Mhm.
They're not seeing the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, and I'm not saying it's going to create more crime. I don't think it's going to bring it down. I just think it's taking your power at your local government and giving it away, because you do have a right to regulate the transportation of it, which weapons are classified as what, all these things. You basically said, oh, we're going to give it up. We're going to give that right up. So yeah, all the Republicans and all the conservatives out there that now hate me, and my dad too, because my dad would probably say, but my dad, he would probably agree with me. I don't know, but he's right of Attila the Hun. So
Eh, and liberals and even conservatives may find my stance on this as, oh, odd. I'm like all for it. All for it. This is the culture that we've created. This is the legislature and governor that Florida has hired. And these are the consequences of our actions or lack thereof. And therefore, this is something that DeSantis clearly stated, and members of the legislature clearly stated
before the vote was even happened.
Exactly. This is what I am going to do. And you know something? DeSantis is standing by his word. Those legislators are standing by their word, and they are carrying out their mandate.
And
Who's going to suffer? Hey, I'm looking at a study from AmericanProgress.org, and a 2022 analysis found that states with permitless carry laws saw a 22% increase in gun homicide for 3 years, for the 3 years following the law's passage. 2019 study found that right to carry laws were associated with a 29% increase in firearm workplace homicides. We could go on and on and on with the stats.
But
however, DeSantis is following through, and these are the consequences of our elections.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats.
If you don't like it, change it.
Democrats
change it by registering and voting.
I mean, Democrats didn't come out to vote. I mean,
Yep.
I'm happy with our legislature. I'm happy with the way the vote turned out, but I'm still going to have certain times that I don't agree with the policy.
Mhm.
But I understand it's the will of the people to get representatives that they want. Democracy is only the way to choose. Once you've chosen them, if you stayed home, you didn't get a chance to choose. That's your fault.
Yeah, don't want to hear from
Because
you
this is a representative
until the next election.
This is a representative government, and that's what you and I've had a conversation. Fuck democracy. Like, and I'm not saying that negative. I'm saying fuck democracy.
Correct.
That's not what our country is. Now, we use democracy to pick these leaders.
Correct.
But if we wanted people to pay attention to state government,
Right.
I can go straight into this book right here and tell you an amendment I wish was never passed. And I don't think that we should have ever given the power to the people for the
Mhm.
Senate.
Oh, for the Senate,
yeah, I
because
mean-
the Senate was
It was chosen by the legislature.
legislatures.
So like right now, there would be we would have a Republican. Like clearly, they would put a Republican in, and we would have two Republicans because we have a supermajority.
Mhm.
But every once in a while, you might say, man, I hate what's going on in the Senate. And then you might say, well, I wouldn't typically vote for a Democrat, but I might just have to.
Mhm.
But I'm not saying that in the way
Mhm.
I'm saying those were the choices you had to
Right,
make
right,
because you had to predict what your legislature was going
right.
to do. I mean, Boston would have never had a Republican. It would, yeah, just,
We could say the same about how we elect or appoint judges, but that's a different conversation.
absolutely.
But going back to what you were saying,
we will talk about that too. But people don't pay attention to local government. There's a whole reason there's a whole reason for this. Like I'm trying to point out, like Washington D.C. has nothing to do. I mean, it gets your blood up. It gets you angry. It gets you all riled up. Has nothing to do with your day to day.
that's correct.
Just like you were saying, when I would go ape shit
Mm-hmm.
because of the 10 election.
Right, right.
Because I would just go like, I cannot believe Alan Grayson can say these things and people will not realize that he can't do any fucking thing about the three things he wants to take care of.
Because Americans don't know.
But they felt good, didn't they?
They felt good.
Lower
they're in their
taxes.
feelings again, and that's what campaigns do.
Yeah, lower taxes.
And we don't know.
We're going to lower taxes. We're going to lower tolls.
Ignorant.
And we're going to lower rent. Like, okay, well, those are all like local government things. And you know what? Now these people who are so wrapped up in Washington think, oh yeah, Alan Grayson can do these things. No, he can't.
Right.
And that's why we had to have our candidate who only got 60 votes. But our candidate pointed out in the very first debate, I think those roads are toll roads, belong to the state. And then Greg Fox jumps in there and kind of clarifies, like, yeah, it's true. Come on. And I'm sitting here, a guy that's worked with the congressman that was the chairman of the transportation department. It's
right.
Like, you can't make this shit up.
Can't. So
we could have gone on a bunch of things, but I'm so happy today to have had this long conversation. And no, stimulating. Even though I tried to have to fake that I disagree. I don't disagree. I think that the reason they did it is kind of, again, similar to a grand jury. But see, a grand jury is, you're selected for it. That's a difference. And there's no true leadership on this thing. So yeah, I'll agree with you, but I also agree that you just made the most stimulating conversation. I'm going to be like totally in my head all day.
I'm in your head now.
Like I'm going to do doctor's appointments and everything. And I'll be thinking,
I'm in this head.
Why didn't I say this? Or why didn't I do this? or I'll have people that will watch this for the first time and say, Joel's not a conservative. And I'll be like, I'm going to define Rhino because I believe in my party and I believe in what we believe. But the people today seem to be going in a whole different direction. And I think that's where you get the Lincoln Project. That's where you get these people. Okay, you don't like George W. Bush. You don't like George Herbert Walker Bush. You have replaced Ronald Reagan with Donald Trump. And I'm sorry, that's not happening in my book. Okay, so it's like, yeah, they were the similarity is they were both actors and they both got a divorce. Oh, wow. But how many divorces he had one, and it's very public. He didn't import.
Now we're going on tangents here.
He didn't import his women, and I don't have a problem with who he imported. They were beautiful. Yeah. Donald Trump is, as they say, a patriot. he just doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut sometimes.
Well, the 2024 Republican primary ticket is adding up.
See, there's a lot of
It's gonna be
questions.
fun.
There's a lot of question. I talked to a lot of people on that though, and that's something we'll talk about later. But I think it's a lot harder than people think for Donald Trump now, and I think because he's already on the campaign trail, there's a lot of people that are starting to get fatigue, Trump fatigue. Now, whether it gets there or not, the problem was the Republicans didn't take him as a threat the first time, and he rolled right over him. So, well, David, great discussion. John, I'm sorry we had like 12 topics that we could have covered. I want everybody to realize that we have all the social media, all those social media right there. I want you to make sure that you get on these social media. We have several accounts. We need you out there. We need you paying attention to. If you disagree with us, that's the most important time to reach out. That's the most important time to watch a show like this. So I had a great lunch with. Wish I had her card in front of me because Stephanie is she's a media person, and she just. I think we both walked away from our conversation. We talked politics, and it was like no tension. There was no animosity. We had real conversation because we took the feeling out of it, and we talked about what is actually going on.
Yep.
So, David, I'm going to have to wrap this up because I got those late doctor's appointments and things like that. But
please go to our socials. We're building this community. We need you to be a part of that community. Please like, share, hit the notification button so we're on air.
And those Podcast Expo people, if we're doing anything that we could do better, if there's anything you see that we can do better, just give us a holler, because you know what? We want this to be for everybody. We want to bring America together again. We want people to realize that they're not alone. You can't make this shit up.
Amen to that.
So I think when you hear that, people just kind of look at you and go, you know what? That is like the perfect name for a podcast, because it happens to every one of us.
It is what it is.
So share those stories. Share those stories with David at j-washington.com, Joel at j-washington.com. I have no problem answering your emails. I love your emails, especially when you disagree with me.
If you disagree with us, come at us with facts.
Oh yeah.
No feelings.
If you
facts.
If I got in your feeling
references.
If I got in your feelings and that's why you're angry and you want to write me, then you better think like
hypothetical.
Because if I come at you, it's going to be facts. I'm not going to use I'm going to use statistics. I'm going to use math. I'm going to use history. I'm going to use something, and you're going to be like, just name calling. And I'll be like, you can call me any name you want to, but unless you hit me with a car or break my bones, I've been there.
Right.
It's like, say the worst thing you can. You might make me mad, but I can recover. As long as I'm not in a hospital. I hate hospitals.
Here's our socials again. Please reach out to us. Let's have that conversation. Be a part of our community. We got great things happening. You want to take us out of here with our theme music, Joel?
Am I? I guess I can walk. Okay. See, this is where we have a John.